really like about him is a lot of the things he's had to say about COVID. And I actually don't think it's the specific things that he says so much as he said things that weren't the allowed things to say. Whether people agree with the specific things that he says or not, I know people who'll be like, oh, I think he's kind of kooky on this or that. But I mean, it wasn't that long ago that people's real life relationships were destroyed over these people veering outside of the acceptable lane of thought on COVID. And this stuff that was, I mean, I don't know, most of these conspiracies now turned out to be not conspiracies at all. And there were really tangible things that people lost. I mean, people lost businesses, people couldn't say goodbye to loved ones, and people lost relationships over things that turned out to be lies anyway. And that's why I do think, honestly, that everyone does it, right? Everybody has preconceived notions. It's human to have preconceived notions. But I think that it's really healthy and it makes you a smarter, more well-rounded, more creative, more perceptive person to acknowledge that and willingly try to look outside of that and see if what you think is just because of certain pressures or what you think and why you think it.
So as I mentioned, you take this idea of non-binary thinking and you bring it through the prism of religion and politics. But I think maybe the most interesting to me is also just our personal relationships become very binary. And this is from some of the talking points and experts from your book. But I'm going to read this. We write people off unnecessarily. We miss out on personal relationships that could have been fulfilling. For example, someone you might disagree with on guns might have a parent suffering from the same illness, or know a good lawyer who can keep you out of jail. You know, Kat, I spent 5 years. You and I actually knew each other before I went to ESPN and before I did sports. We knew each other at National Review. So I was in this world. I left this world and went to sports, and now I've come back to this world. And I will say one of my favorite things about 5 years in sports was, you stopped. I'm never going to pretend like it's not in there and not part of the conversation. Oh, he's liberal. Oh, he's conservative. Oh, she's this, he's that. But there were so many other touch points at which you could relate to somebody. And the most obvious one was sports. Like, what do you think of the Cowboys? What do you think of this? And it makes people more dimensional, which we are. And it makes people more interesting. And I do think that is a healthier, and maybe it is how most Americans live their life anyway. You know, my 5 years in sports put me back in touch with America and how because what you and I do is very much in the bubble of thinking things about politics often. But America has gravitated into that bubble of losing the depth of the person you're interacting with and seeing not how you disagree, but all the commonalities.
Yeah, I'm someone who's independent, and so it's very rare. Actually, it's never happened for me to find someone I'm aligned with on everything. I have a lot of friends that are conservative, but they don't love Trump. I have a lot of friends that are super MAGA, love Trump. I have friends that are very left wing. I have friends that are disengaged from it. And all of these relationships are relationships that I'm very, very grateful for. And I think that there's also this fear. I think that there is a fear of expressing an opinion outside of whatever your team is. If you're seen as, oh, I'm conservative, or, oh, I'm liberal, out of a very real fear, I think, of being ostracized by that group. Because I think as divided as we are, to your point, we're not still as divided in our minds and reality than we see portrayed, not just in the media, but also in our conversations with each other.
What's interesting as well, you live in New York. I don't remember where you're from, Kat, but you're not from New York City.
Yeah, from the Detroit area.
I met your dad one time.
My dad,
I remember I met your dad in the lobby. I lived in New York for 15 years, and that meant, obviously, that I had a lot of friends who were liberal. The majority of my friends were liberal because I lived in New York. It's just, that's the world. That's the bubble, right? I will say this, Kat, and I don't want to do a tit for tat, or I don't want to I don't want to otherize, but I do think, and acutely since Donald Trump, that I think that many on the left use it as their primary identity. So what you and I are talking about is there's so much more to your identity than your politics. But even though I had those friends, and I'm still friends with a lot of them, and I think I would say this, often socially, I felt an undercurrent of judgment. Like there's a judgment to whatever is going on or what I might think about something that is about how we differ politically. And it didn't define the relationship 100%. There were our kids, our sports, whatever it may be. But I do think that the left has draped themselves in their political identity as their primary identity a little more than the right. I live in Dallas now, and I do think I have some I think I can compare it. I don't think it's as extreme on the right. I really don't. I'm not saying it's not there, but I don't think it's as extreme as their primary identity.
I think so. I think, first of all, that you're correct, that I think it's gotten worse in terms of people getting broken by Donald Trump. I'm someone that my beliefs have been the same. I'm small government across the board, so sometimes it places me at odds with people on either side. But I had a friend who was a very close friend of mine who suddenly it was a problem, the things that I'd always believed, because Trump was running and all that mattered was that Trump lost. I hadn't changed, but all of a sudden things were different. And this is a very close friend that is no longer in my life anymore, because it became where we'd be out just trying to have like a social event, and he'd be like, oh, how are you gonna, be talking about I had the libertarian candidate at the time, Joe Jorgensen, on my comedy advice show, Sincerely Cat, RIP. I had her on that show that I had at the time. And I wasn't even allowed, like, in his mind, to do that, because how could I be giving a platform to her right now? Meaning the time when Trump must be defeated above all else. But I think I've also gotten it from people who, if I'm critical of Trump, people will come after me, call me a traitor, say that. And again, I've never claimed to be a Republican, which is why it's so funny when I'm called a rhino. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm independent. I've never claimed to be a Republican either. But I think that you really, really, really nailed it when you say that for people it could become their identity. And I think something else that I write about in the book is there's this study, and it's very obvious, but moral outrage is more often rooted in self-interest than altruism. It can make you feel like you're doing something to help these problems when you are really not doing anything at all. And I think the perfect example of that is, what we saw even at the convention, the Democratic convention that's happening this week, which is I'm the good team. And so therefore, you're the bad team. Trump is dangerous, as Obama said. Trump is dangerous. And he talked a lot about division being bad, and I agreed with that, but I don't see how calling Trump dangerous really helps achieve those ends, right? Then you get to be good just by very virtue of not being on that bad team. And I think that can be really hard for people to give up, because then it's like, oh, wait, I'm not just good because of the box that I check when I vote or because I'm not a Republican. Then you have to think about actually getting out there and doing something. That's a lot harder.
That's really good. Moral outrage is more about self-interest than it is about altruism. Mm-hmm. That is a very flowery and accurate way, I think, of explaining what we've all kind of used shorthand, virtue signaling, right? Yeah. What you're doing is draping yourself in virtue by having the right opinion. And I've said, and I don't want to spend the bulk of our conversation being like, and the left is bad too, but I think that for much of the left, your vote has become, the ballot box has become your church, and your vote has become your act of penance or your charity. That you're a good person because you went into the voting booth and checked the right box, to your point, or even less, just express the right outrage on social media or even in your social circles, that you become a good person. I think that is definitely something indicative of the left. Now, this is not, I don't want to do this to say everything on the right is right, but I do think this binary thinking that you're talking about on a personal level has really, really inhabited the left.
See, I definitely understand. I get it from both sides, and I explain it in the book this way, where I will have, viewers of Fox, and this is not all viewers, right? I'm on tour. I sell out shows. These are Fox people coming to these shows. A lot of the audience is awesome, but there are, of course, those exceptions of people that are like, she made fun of Trump, or she's not a registered Republican, or she votes third party, therefore she's my enemy. And they'll give me those things. On the other side, though, there are people who are on the left who will not speak to me at all just because I work at Fox News. So it doesn't matter what I
And but what,
say.
real quick, Kat, and the difference in those two groups of people that I noticed though is the people who require you to be predictable, right? I used to like you until the
Right.
people who on the right who require you to not deviate from anything they agree are honestly strangers. They're their audience, and you are a personality to them, at least the way you're describing it to me right now. And the people who on the left who are ostracizing you because of your views are supposed to be the ones that already know you on a deeper level and understand those vulnerabilities or understand the layers of you as a human being. And I guess that's the difference. I do think the right is guilty of it, but I haven't had many friends on the right ever go, well, Will, you disagreed with me in this way, and therefore we're not friends. And the left seems to be more willing to exercise personal relationships because of politics.
I think that makes a lot of sense. If I can also get really deep and probably too personal right now, but it's in the
Yeah.
book, so whatever. I have experienced that with religion as well. I've had experienced personal relationships where I'm no longer religious, and that's created some rifts in family relationships. I get really deep into the relationship with my mom who's been dead for 10 years, which not because it was easy, but for me, I'm somebody who I know that I would be happier if I were religious. So I'm the opposite of judge religious people. I know I would be happier. I personally can't get there. But this is another thing where and I actually I'm not closing that door. I hope to get there someday. So it's actually more than just that I wish I could. Um, but I think that the key here is to be willing to talk to people. I have many close friends who are very, very religious people who are not judgmental people. I think that this country was founded on individual rights, and I think the more that we could get back to, respecting individual rights, that would be better. But sadly, I think we go more and more towards this idea in the opposite direction, where you kind of have to fall in line. Um, I really think that the key is communicating with each other more, and I really think the key is being willing to have those conversations and not shutting each other out. And I'm willing to put myself
So,
out there. So
and you have in I used to like you until, and I know you've got to go in just a moment. I just want to share two thoughts with you before you go. So when it comes to the other two areas of binary thinking that I mentioned that you talk about, one is politics, and we can talk about this on another occasion. I don't like partisanship, Kat. I don't consider myself on a team. I like to think that I'm a critical thinker. I also think it's interesting that we have to think about over the last 10 years how those two teams, those two bipolar teams in politics, have really changed their underlying policies. And I don't know if that should make us cynical or hopeful to the binary system. I don't know I honestly do not know yet what I think about that. But on the religious front, I'll be interested in continuing to know you. And what I mean by that, and I don't mean to be patronizing or I'm older than you, but I think I've said this to my audience, or I hope, I lost my religion for a while. I mean, I lost faith, and I know why. And it was a lack of humility for me. It was too much hubris and too much intellectualism and these types of things. I know you're going to have a child soon, which is awesome.
yeah,
And
by
I'm
the
not
way,
saying
I'm
that'll
four
be the
months
thing.
pregnant. Yeah, for me it was
I'm not
trauma.
saying that'll be the thing that changes it, but it could be the thing that changes it. I don't think religion, as someone who has come around you, like you said, you're open to it. And by the way, I always was as well. I wasn't
Yeah.
dogmatic. I was always open.
Yeah, I'm not
It's
an
not
atheist. I'm
bipolar. I don't think
agnostic. I'm a
it's,
question mark. So
and that's what I would have described myself. And I just think actually getting beyond strict bipolar thinking and just being open-minded and open-hearted is what led me back to seeing that it's the path to a greater purpose. And maybe you'll find it, maybe you won't. But I will say I don't think I got there because I joined a team or was bipolar.
yeah.
But I was not just critically thinking, but critically open to something that I think is ultimate truth.
Yeah, and I'm still open and I'm always open to changing as a person, and as I learn new information, and even I'm very excited to be a mom, which is never a sentence that I thought I would say in my entire, and again, you've known me for a long time, so you know how true that is. That I'm 4 months pregnant. I can't wait to be a mom. And as much as I tease my husband, he's truly the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I'm really excited for this. I know like next chapter sounds so cheesy, but it is. I mean, it's my life is about to completely change, and I can't wait.
It's going to be awesome as long as he gives up video games. All right, you guys should go get her book. It's I Used to Like You Until. It's the newest book from Kat Timpf. As she said, she's vulnerable. She's thinking through these things open-minded and critically.